Nigeria is teetering on the brinks of state failure. And of course, it was the killings in Benue and parts of Plateau that has gotten Nigeria designated right now as a country of particular concern by the United States government. I hope and pray that the tantrums from Donald Trump, the disrespect, the bullying, will serve as a shock therapy to our president and commander-in-chief to now decisively deal with anybody, any group, armed, that are killing Nigerians. We wasted too much time arguing over the truism or otherwise of a Christian genocide in Nigeria. We need the commander-in-chief to secure every part of the country as long as the police, the armed forces, the immigration, the customs, the NDLEA, and all other security agencies are still under his control. It is his responsibility.
Do you think the ADC stands a chance if they get their act together to challenge the APC?
It's going to be a very tall order.
Even if they have Obi, Atiku, El Rufai, I mean, these are top names.
These are top names in the history of what has become, or what has been identified as being wrong with Nigeria. We all know that some people have not done well at all. I mean, if you're telling me now that people have not done well, you are preaching Catholicism to the Pope. And one of his biggest critics. Can you tell me, in all of the vocals, 3 policy alternatives that the ADC has been able to come up with to challenge what Tinubu is actually implementing now? Clearly.
None.
Because democracy rests on 2 planks, government and opposition. Nigeria is not only suffering from failure of governance by the government. Nigeria is also having the problem of failure of opposition. The APC guys succeeded more in opposition than they did in government. Why the current opposition led by the PDP failed more in opposition than they did in government? So they did better in government and failed in opposition. Something happened to Nigeria recently. People are not paying attention. This is the first time the federal government cannot meet up its responsibilities in a long while. You know why? Our neoliberal practices since 1999 has come to its wit's end. So government major revenue comes from crude oil export, from government.
Yes.
And then taxes from you and I. The government had to take that decision when Naira was floating aimlessly towards 2,000 Naira, and it was poised to float aimlessly towards Venezuela and maybe Zimbabwe.
This podcast is brought to you by the Volume Pod in association with the Cable NG, Al Barka Radio, 97.5 FM, and Diazu Development.
This is Volume with FemiDlive. Yes, it's the end of the year, and what a way to end the year, similarly to how we started off. When we started off Volume with FemiDlive, which is not so long ago, for those of you who know, but it's been a very interesting journey. Our first guest was Majeed Dahiru. He was the very first. He was kind enough to grace us with his presence. And that was part of our destiny. It transformed our journey. Also because you were involved, also because you had a lot to write in. And that video continues to make rounds. And every time I look at my phone, there's still somebody updating the comments about a comment that they agree or disagree with. And today, we're ending 2025 recording with Majeed Dahiru, a political analyst. And at some point, I'm conveniently would say he is definitely a political strategist of reckon and one that one should always follow with as always. All right, having said that, this is Volume with FemiDlive. I am Femi D. MLM, and my guest today is Majeed Dahiru. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Femi D, for having me today again.
Wow. Just a few months back, and like I did say, you're the first and you're the one ending the year. It's so powerful. A lot of things has happened in the year 2025, where we reflect on so many of the points of things that has happened. But I think I would take it up with where we are in our political space, in terms of some of the political parties. Let's even start from there, because somehow, some way, it's always connected. PDP, for example, you had your prediction about 3 years ago, an article you published in the Premium Times as regards if the PDP doesn't get it right with their zoning formula, they would almost be dead and gone. And just yesterday, I was watching a TikTok video of my friend Coyote where he talked about what was left of the states that the PDP had in their control. this is more bad. This is like worse than we envisaged for them, isn't it, sir?
Well, yes, because one would have thought that when you make a prediction, when you put out a warning there to say, look, if you do this or you don't do that, the repercussions and the consequences are likely going to be this and that. So I would have expected that the PDP should have adjusted, take heed on time, and make sure that they do not embark on the road to self-destruction. But unfortunately, everything is happening in the PDP today has its roots in its mismanagement of its internal processes, which resulted into the PDP opting for winnability by picking another candidate at a time that the entire country had arrived at a consensus that power should shift to the south. So I had warned then ahead of the primaries, when I saw the signs that the PDP wasn't going to buy into the zoning arrangement, I had warned that the APC had already concluded on that, and the APC was going to go south. And we saw how the APC managed its primaries, and the southern candidate emerged, who today is our president, Tinubu. But the PDP opted for the north. They felt they could inherit the massive voting strength of the north as an advantage going to the election. But we had also told them that the north itself is not as parochial or as sectional as most people may think. They've had power in the region for 8 years, and there's a bit of more willingness to concede to the south. And that the APC is going to beat the PDP in the north with the southern candidate. Even the PDP ran with the northern candidate and also defeat the PDP in the south. And that the PDP was going to go into extinction arising from that mismanagement. And today, here we have it. So essentially, when the ambition of Atiku Abubakar happened to the PDP,
it's happened to the PDP.
It developed a Wike problem. And it is the Wike problem that has resulted into a comatose PDP as we speak. So the consequences of not managing the internal processes and the PDP's jettisoning of zoning, as I predicted, was going to run the party into troubled waters and it might likely sink in the post-Buhari era into oblivion. So what we have today is that it is now clear to everybody, all and sundry, that the internal wranglings within the PDP is such that it is a high-risk party now for anybody who wants to contest election. So initially what we saw was that a very influential and very popular aspirant for the presidency from the south left the PDP ahead of the presidential election. I'm talking about Peter P2B now, and on Labour Party platform. So what he did was he appropriated, effectively, the southern base of the PDP. And that was how the PDP lost influence in the south. The Obi factor. Now, Wike refused to leave the PDP and stayed with him and worked for another southern candidate, Amabala Tinubu of the APC, and has continued to remain in the PDP to ensure that it does not have the kind of strength that is required to challenge the sitting government, especially one that can enable Atiku again and another to run on the platform.
So let's even dig into that. And, you talked about the political calculation and strategy around this. Wike's political calculation, he writes it out, he envisions it, he implements it, and it looks like nobody is able to hold up to him with regards to that. Working in another political party against, PDP, the party where he is, what is the end game for Wike, for example? Because some people say he will be used, he will be dumped. He's been used and dumped by people who have run through the PDP in the past. And people with superior minds know the point where they would dump him if he's going to be dumped.
Why do you have to dump a player that is so useful as having helped you decimate the opposition? What strategic importance or reason, for that matter, would you want to dump such a politician? So the talk of him being used and dumped, I don't see that actually happening anytime soon. Because if there's one thing you can give to the president, he's an astute politician who knows how to reward his core loyalists. And that is why, for instance, he has retained the man as Minister of the FCT, a pseudo-governor with some level of influence and capabilities to dispense patronage enough to continue to implement the agenda he has within the PDP. And what is Wike's endgame? Simple, he has stated this clearly. He wants to be able to return as president in 2027, as per Southern Solidarity.
2030, you mean?
2027, to return as president.
Okay, to return to the year.
For second term.
Okay.
As per Southern Solidarity. Right? And he stated it ahead of the president's own declaration. As we speak, the president has not declared for second term, but Wike has said it almost a year ago that he's committed to the president's second term. And so because he also envisaged that what happened to him in the PDP might happen to another Southern candidate in the PDP, and the non-Nana might take the ticket, he now decided to stay put in the party to prevent that from happening.
Is it preventing it from happening, or is killing the same party?
If you have to kill it to prevent it from happening, so be it. What is important is it has been prevented from happening, either dead or alive.
Could they have stopped this political assassination of the party by any means, through any method?
They should have zoned the ticket to the South in 2023. Not necessarily to Wike, any Southerner. And the PDP was fortunate, they had a Southerner then who was phenomenally popular. I describe him then as the Buhari of the South. I describe him then as the Buhari of 2023. Buhari was of 2015. That the Buhari of 2023 was Peter Obi from the Southeast. And I've always said it that, look, once you zone to the South or to any region, it behoves now on the leaders to now look at the geopolitical zone within the region that is most deserving, putting into so many factors into consideration. Everybody knows that since 1999, the Southeast, as a bloc, as a zone, and the people of the Southeast, where they are located or situated in Nigeria, have given a kind of sentimental support to the PDP because of the electoral factor. And so, when the PDP fell from power in 2015, the Southeast continued to give that support to the PDP. In fact, in 2019, the PDP rejected Buhari second time with the same resolve as they rejected him in 2015, despite the political persecution that they were experiencing. When it was the turn of the South in 2023, nobody needed to tell the PDP that the zone to zero down on was the Southeast, the most consistent support base of the party since 1999, that hasn't had a shot at either the presidency or vice president on its platform. It's common sense, and we're advised. And we said, you're even lucky this time around. Surprisingly, somebody has emerged from this region that is even popular ahead of the elections across the country, who is simply seen as different. Just the way Buhari was seen in 2015, outside of the establishment, different, disciplined, honest, man of integrity. You have someone like this from the South too. Just wrong with him. And I also caution that the PD does not have to aim to win that election. You know why? Incumbency factor in Nigeria comes with certain advantages that are not altogether democratic in nature, if you know what I mean. But that the PDP will simply run with the Southern candidate as popular as Peter B was to consolidate on his stronghold into the post-Buhari era. So when Buhari leaves power, I don't have that single individual in the North that can point one direction and everybody follows. The ground can become more equal, so the PDP can now compete fairly. But Buhari had to go first. So what the PDP should have aimed to achieve was, let us hold our ground. The Southeast, the South-South, part of the North-Central. But unfortunately, they lost the opportunity. And when they lost it, the PDP cannot easily recover because they have lost so much ground in their traditional stronghold. For instance, look at the Anambra election. Nobody bought the PDP nomination form for gubernatorial election. Nobody. So the form was eventually donated to somebody. Let's come around on our platform. And the person was lost in that election. I can't even tell the figure what garnered in the vote. It was even the APC that competed with ABGA. Meaning, like I rightly predicted to, that once the PDP makes this mistake, the APC will torpedo the PDP in the southern and northern base. So we heard that the party is sliding towards a one-party state. It's not the making of Tinubu. It's not the making of the APC. It is PDP's undoing. So the last tranche of governors now, or batch of governors, are camping to the APC. Are not doing so because they hate the PDP or they have a grudge with the PDP. They're not doing so because, as it stands now, the PDP might not have a candidate going to the next election.
Let's
because of the prolonged, or should I say, the entanglements around some litigations within the members of the party.
Definitely. I mean, it's one thing to do that. I think about AP and CPC, the way they merged, that should be about 2012, 2013 or thereabout, to produce the APC. And they became stronger. the PDP had the chance to swallow up some other parties that exist now, but it looks like as it is, even the people who are left in the party are being swallowed up by the ADC. And I'm thinking to myself, ADC seems to be on steroids of growth to swallow up anybody who is left outside of the APC and possibly become a challenger. And I use the word steroids meaning on a fast growth path so that people who are inclined medically don't get me wrong, but they're on a fast growing path to take up anybody who is available. Do you think the ADC stands a chance if they get their act together to challenge the APC in days to come?
It's going to be a very tall order for the ADC to challenge the PDP for many reasons. But
even if they have Obi, Atiku, El Rufai, I mean, these are top names.
These are top names in the history of what has become, or what has been identified as being wrong with Nigeria. Yes, you can mention Peter Obi and a few others, but the fact is this. The bulk of the members of the ADC are dissatisfied, disgruntled, renegade politicians from within the PDP and the APC fold. So what difference really with a party that is chaired by David Mark?
What's wrong with David Mark chairing?
He's been a member of the establishment since the 70s. With due respect to him. So what is that new thing is going to inspire that make the average Nigerian decide to dare the odds, line up under the sun, or under the rain, under the cold night, to go and vote for a party that is chaired by David Mark against the party that is being led by Tinubu? What's
are you insinuating
contextually?
Yeah.
What's the difference between these two gentlemen in terms of those that are seeking change for the Nigerian nation? So what kind of change, what kind of hope does David Mark, Malami, even Atiku Abubakar himself, and others in this category, what kind of hope do you think they can inspire in the ordinary Nigerian enough to make people want to put their lives on the line to protect their votes and struggle against the ruling party?
But they're also very vocal people. At best, President Tinubu of the APC would speak in many of the campaign grounds, speak at many of those places. But as we already have with the ADC, there are a lot of speaking heads now on various subjects. Those who are specialized in issues of law are speaking about, well, rule of law. Those who know about politics are speaking. Peter Obi was speaking about unemployment. He's very good with data. He was talking about Action Aid and Plans reports about 8% unemployment for young people. I mean, you have these different people. Bolaji, though, is an excellent person when it comes to information dissemination. Something tells me that the more they speak, even though in various tempos and times, they would communicate to everyone that Bola Tinubu has not actually done well for Nigeria.
We all know that some people have not done well at all. I mean, if you're telling me now that people have not done well, you are preaching Catholicism to the Pope. I'm one of his biggest critics. However, Femi, you're a journalist, you are an influential broadcaster, meaning you are well informed about the Nigerian issues, enough to ask questions that matter. Can you tell me, in all of the vocals that you've talked about from the ADC, can you synthesize 3 policy alternatives that the ADC has been able to come up with to challenge what Tinubu is actually implementing now? Clearly.
None.
Is there anything to hold on to in all of their rhetorics, all of their vocals? Is there anything to hold on to strongly to challenge what Tinubu is offering to the Nigerian people?
So I would answer you by saying none, but at the same time ask about why is then an intellectual deficit to what they could provide?
It's when the ADC was formed, or being formed rather.
Do you think it's not completed yet? It's not formed?
No, so when it was being formed in the early days of the ADC, as a coalition party, the party has existed for a long time. I met with a few people within the party. Because my role sometimes goes beyond the screen or the studio or behind the mic. I also try to consult with people in the politics to say, look, I don't think you are doing right. I think you also need to do better, even as an opposition. Because democracy rests on 2 planks, government and opposition. Nigeria is not only suffering from failure of governance by the government. Nigeria is also having a problem of failure of opposition. It's not for nothing that opposition leaders all over the world, all over the democratic world, are scrutinized as much as they scrutinize those in government. I mean, look at Kevin Badenoch, for instance. She's as scrutinized, as criticized, as Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. If you go to the US, for instance, people are telling the Democratic Party now to say, look, with Trump's influence, you need to take a second look at your excessive liberalism to be able to win back the American people. So you need an charismatic figure that will be drawn from the centrist part of the Democratic Party to be able to win confidence, because somehow Americans have embraced some level of conservatism from the base. So you need to work on that. Meaning, even the opposition has a role to play to provide alternatives and guide the people right. That is completely absent in Nigeria, as we speak. Even the basic alternative policy proposition to something so germane to all of us. Tinubu made the pronouncement the very moment he was inaugurated as president that subsidy on petrol is gone. We are still battling with that issue till today. None of your political parties, none of your political leaders, beyond criticizing him for doing that, which they say they would have done too, none has been able to come up with an authority to say, I'm going to cancel that policy. I'm going to restore subsidy.
But the likes of Professor Patu Tommy and quite a number of politicians conceived what one would call a shadow party which they picked up alternate people to do certain roles and speak about that. They met with stiff opposition from the DSS, and this would have been some set of intellectual framework to respond to say, President Tinubu, your thoughts on oil and this and that is wrong, and here's the alternative. Do you think some level of intellectualism in Nigeria, as one would have found from the likes of Okojo-Iweala and many of those names, is gone because people are opposing, but with really no valid framework?
You don't need to form a shadow government in a presidential system of government. It is strange to presidential system of government. And when you see something is shadow and it is government, you will not blame the DSS or the government of the day for taking the steps they took to say, look, so we don't get confused. We don't have a parallel government. It was unnecessary. Patitomi is a professor, he's an intellectual, he's an activist, he's a politician. If you believe, for instance, that the policy initiative or direction of the government of the day is wrong, simply state it as so and give you an alternative. As a member of the opposition, that will count for the opposition. You'd have to constitute a cabinet. Look at your own areas of specialization. I have been opposing subsidy removal before it was removed, during the time it was removed, and afterwards, up till this point in time. In the whole of this country, I think we're about 4 of us that actively said no to subsidy removal. Fumi Falana, Dr. Balazaka, Professor Farouk Perugi in the US, and myself. But myself and Farouk Perugi, we are the most vocal. On weekly basis, on my back page column, I write about this. On my programs on radio, I talk about it. We also warned about the flotation of the Naira. These are the 2 most basic policies of this administration that has created the problem we're facing now. They are promising us a better tomorrow, but today is getting worse, right? You would have expected an opposition to have sat down all this while, look at these 2 policies, and come up with a workable alternative. I cannot take an opposition seriously. That can't tell me simple alternatives to what Tinubu has done. I can't file up in the morning and queue to vote for somebody who was Tinubu's friend yesterday, turned enemy today because he was edged out of the dining table where the national cake was being shared, to vote against his friend, friend turned foe. I can't do that. And I don't expect anybody that is reasonable enough to do that. What are you offering me? Now, this is even on the most basic aspects. The president, as flimsy as something like the national anthem, the president changed the national anthem, right? So before us felt that the old national anthem is better than this one. Because this talks about...
It tunes better.
This talks about tongue, tribe, and I feel is a relic of colonialism, right? No political party or politician has been able to come up with an alternative to say, I will restore the old and new, or is it the new old national anthem, when I'm elected as president. As basic, as trivial as this. It should be the campaign issue. Some people would have voted just for that reason, to say, look, I want this other national anthem back. None of them have been able, none, to come up with these alternatives. So we have a chronic failure of opposition in Nigeria. Let me take you back to 2013. When the Jonathan administration removed subsidy on petrol on the first day of January 2012, President Tinubu, the then Chief Bola Tinubu, opposed that policy and wrote an alternative that said, don't remove subsidy.
Well published across
Well
papers.
published, and gave the reasons and predicted the consequences that we are facing today anyway. Based on that, people were able to hold on to Tinubu's opinion on subsidy to protest at Ojota in Lagos.
Yes, Ojota. Yeah, that was the
For Buhari, Buhari simply told you the subsidy itself is a scam and the Nigerians are being ripped off. Meaning, even at his 5 naira, we are paying with a premium, yet somebody is claiming subsidy on our head. So I remember then Professor Tam David West, who was his petroleum minister and a very strong supporter of Buhari, came up with a theory then that, look, from his own analysis, petrol shouldn't cost more than 45 naira per litre. These two leaders of the opposition gave an alternative thinking. And people voted for APC and Buhari thinking that, one, subsidy cannot be removed. Two, petrol price will only drop to 45 naira. These were the driving force behind that movement. Whether they came to power and did the opposite, it is a completely different ballgame. What we are saying is this. The APC guys succeeded more in opposition than they did in government. Why the current opposition led by the PDP failed more in opposition than they did in government? So they did better in government and failed in opposition.
Oh, hold on for a moment. Do you mind taking that again?
So what I'm saying is, the APC guys in power today
Yes.
succeeded more in opposition than they did in power. Why the opposition today, led by the PDP, the largest opposition party in Nigeria, succeeded more in power and failed woefully in opposition. So they have failed more in opposition than they did in power. So in retrospect, the APC was far a better opposition party or platform, while the PDP did better in power than they are doing in opposition now. But it tells you that opposition is very important in the democracy. In the build-up to the 2015 election, we also had something that the AC and then brought on board into the polity. They had star governors. Whether they were real or not, but the media protected them as star governors. Fashola,
Yes.
Shomole, Arebeshala. They deployed the media to showcase what these guys are doing in their states. Massive Fashola development and all and all. And the members in the National Assembly opposed every policy of government, toe for toe, and back to back, bumper to bumper. This Femi, but as chief of staff now, was so vocal on the floor as a minority leader that when the APC came to power, not a few people within the party felt he should just automatically assume the role of majority leader or speakership then, because he had paid his dues on the floor, holding government to account. Can you say that of the current opposition party in the National Assembly? From the Labour Party, from the PDP and all?
Let's swing in another direction for a moment. May this year, I sat across you and I asked you about Fubara's fate. And I remember some of your opening statements and also your ending statement. One of your key predictions was that he would join the APC. And he has joined the APC, despite the fact that it was being squandered, being stamped through the theatrics of what was going on. Was it always that easy to see?
Well, for those who have eyes to see, it'll be easy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. He was going to join the APC. I've always known that the PDP by this time of the year was going to be in tatters. So that governors like Fubara, who didn't have a dog in the fight between Wike and the other faction within the PDP, really, would have no choice but to move. For example, the Adeleke of Osun has moved to a court party. Moved to and is about to leave the PDP. He's doing his final medicals and other tests before he's giving the form to fill. Kefas of Taraba has picked his membership card for the APC. Essentially, the PDP is left with just 3 governors. Bauchi Governor Bola Mohammed, Fintiri of Adamawa
State,
and the man in Oyo, Makinde of these are essentially the 3 PDP governors that are left. Essentially. And anytime from now, who knows what will happen? Now, because of that, there's no PDP anywhere. There's no Labour Party anymore. The ADC is not that kind of party that can inspire confidence enough for people to join. In any case, the APC has an existential matter in court that might torpedo this whole arrangement.
Yes. Courtesy of Kachuku.
Kachuku. You know, when we were forming the ADC, and they said they were talking about the ADC, I asked a simple question. I said, did they consult Kachuku? Is he aware of this taking over? Because I know I know the kind of personality that Kachuku is. So, look at it today.
Now, I spoke to him earlier this year, and I know the weight of the things he said.
So I asked, I said, did you guys correct Kachuku before assuming the ownership of ADC? Now, what I'm saying in essence is this. There is no other party for Fubara to go to. Now, Fubara too has decided to move into the ruling party as a way of checkmating, as a way of having security from a godfather that has turned into a bully. That is the end game for him. And this time around, what I will advise is this. Wike should consider his investment in Fubara a lost one. An investment that didn't and would never have yielded returns as much as he would have desired. And in doing this, let's just allow Fubara to be now. Because I don't think that the president will declare an state of emergency to move Fubara again to appease Wike. The times have changed. The governors are largely going to fund the next election, not the federal government. Because the federal government is effectively cash-strapped. For mission policies, you can see they cannot even pay contractors. So it is the state governors that are likely going to fund the party, as was the case in 2003, 2007, and 2011. The first time the federal government actually decided to fund the election directly was from 2015. But this time around, the governors are going to take charge. They have more liquidity. And so Wike should be aware that President Tinubu, his good friend and ally, will be needing the resources of Rivers State as well as the people of Rivers. Because one thing you can give to Fubara, one thing you can give to him. Somehow, he was able to position himself in a way that made him the victim and the pitiable one, which attracted the solidarity and sympathy of the generality of the Rivers people, who saw him as being maligned by a bully. And because in his own style of leadership too, he's a bit more compassionate, more down to earth. So naturally, he has support of the people of Rivers and he controls the purse. If you observe his statement, when the party chairman of the state went to government house to issue his 001 membership card, he said, anything you want, I will foot the bill. He was emphatic. Meaning Fubara is now ready to play the game. That same well, the water was drawn from and kept in the reservoir and was used to chase him out of power. He's now ready to open the tap and spray the water everywhere possible to make the ground very wet and green. So Wike should be careful at this point. Simply serve the interest of the president as much as you can within your capacity as a state minister. Any direct confrontation now with Fubara might not go the way Wike would expect.
Which is the reality on ground.
The reality on ground.
And there's still arguments about whether a state of emergency should have been invoked or not around his leadership at the time, and then what happens if his tenure still count. Those are areas of law that obviously we would have to explore at some point in time. But let's switch to issues of Naira floating. You've always talked about don't do this. And yes, you mentioned now that the federal government has found itself cash strapped and they're dealing with those reality. As one would imagine, I think the biggest advert around Naira is the fact that it is obviously tied to a stable dollar. Oh no, the other way around. The dollar seems stable enough for the Naira now after devaluation, even though publicly it said that it was not devaluation, but the Naira is there. They look like they're a good pair right now. Nothing disrupting that reality, except for the fact that in real life, it doesn't look like much has changed, despite all those other economic pillars being adjusted.
You're talking about the stability in the foreign exchange market now.
Yes.
That stability was because the government went back on its policy of flotation without declaring so. The government has taken over the control on the foreign exchange market by direct intervention and direct auctioning of foreign exchange to borrow the change within certain strict guidelines. The government had to take that decision when Naira was floating aimlessly towards 2,000 Naira, and it was poised to float aimlessly towards Venezuela and maybe Zimbabwe. Meaning, if they had allowed the flotation to continue the way they had envisaged, by now the Naira would have been exchanging with the dollar for close to probably 50,000 Naira to the dollar. So when they now realized that, more than anything else, it was simply the common sense of speculative store of value that was driving down the value of Naira. Simple. If you float a national currency, and for instance, I have 10 million Naira in my account, and you float the Naira, and within 48 hours, the Naira has lost value by, say, 10%. Meaning my savings in Naira
It's now 9 million.
It's not 9 million. Okay, I feel okay, maybe to regain strength after a week or so. By the following week or by 2 weeks later, it has lost close to 40% of its value. What do you think I would do with my 10 million Naira? I will also go in pursuit of the dollar as a store of value. By the time all of us with 10 million, 5 million rush into the market to go and purchase dollars to store the value of our Naira denominated accounts, what will happen to the Naira? It will keep going down.
Yes.
So, the government needed to take responsibility for floating of the currency in the first place. Because it was
And was that a
policy.
good move?
It was the worst thing to happen to our Naira.
Worst?
You can devalue a currency.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you could even say, I'm devaluing Naira from 300 Naira to 2,000 Naira. Devalue, but you are fixing that 2,000. Not flotation. When you float something, it's floating.
Anything has an influence on it.
Exactly. When you say, look, deliberately, we feel that the pressure on our foreign reserves needs to be eased, so we're going to devalue the Naira. From 300 Naira, from 100 Naira, from 2 Naira to 1 million Naira. It's even better. It is a deliberate step. You have calculated the risk. You now know how to manage it. And there'll be stability along with it. But there was no stability. So inflation setting and ate up government revenues itself. And inflation was such that the currency value was impacted negatively on the price of energy. Because energy is denominated in dollars and international products, petrol particularly. So as you have devalued Naira, you're going to likely have an increase in the price in Naira for refined, mostly imported products too. And so Nigeria was in a double jeopardy. Subsidy was gone, and then the price of petrol was increasing per seconds because the Naira was also jumping per seconds. So it was simply something that shouldn't have been done in the first place. I keep saying this. There is no alternative to government intervention in energy. In fact, to show you that government itself has rolled back even its policy on subsidy removal, you can see the effort government is making. All the concessions it is giving to refiners and at home, everything it is doing to make sure that the price of petrol does not go beyond this level, including the Naira for crude sales to Dangote refineries and such other measures, including the intervention in the forex market so that the exchange rate does not depreciate further to now push up the price of PMS. And recently, NMPC released the report, the audited report for 2024, and we saw something that was very curious. Trillions of Naira were spent on a subhead that was called energy security. Which means if you dig deeper, there is probability that government has even spent some money to ensure price stability in petrol. Meaning that indeed government has a core responsibility to intervene in the pricing of energy globally.
But the government oftentimes, I've always said, the problem they had with subsidy was, who are we subsidizing?
We are subsidizing the Nigerian people. If you say
their
there's corruption,
perspective was that they were subsidizing corrupt people, and now they've eliminated the corrupt people. So maybe in truth terms, they could subsidize for the people.
Government has a responsibility to fight corruption. The corruption in subsidy was at the instance of government. You are not a petroleum importer. I'm not. I don't give out the licenses. I do not put the figures together. I don't work for the Counter General's office. I'm not the Minister for Finance. I'm not the Minister for Petroleum. I'm not the President. So if there's corruption in subsidy regime, it is within the circle. So you don't transfer that problem to me. As a citizen, what I deserve is affordable energy, for me to produce goods and services in line with my own endeavor. That's all. So when you begin to bring up excuses of corruption, you begin to wonder, is there any aspect of Nigerian land that you don't have corruption? So we can as well fold up Nigeria and erase from the map because Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. So it's your duty as government to fight corruption and ensure basic services to the people. As we speak, like you pointed out true, there's stability. Inflation is dropping. People question why NBS keeps telling us inflation is dropping. It is dropping because the rate at which things were increasing appears to have slowed because government has stabilized price of energy and forex through direct intervention. That's the reality. If they had allowed the policy as envisaged, as canvassed in the beginning, to just continue, the market forces dictating all, would have been in hell by now. Even though it's still very hot, but would have been in serious hell. So what am I saying in essence? One would have expected that if the government is still grandstanding and doubling down on its policies, even by its own admission, by its own actions, it appears as though the government has rolled back these policies tactically. Then what is stopping those in opposition from saying, look, to make life better for us, we are going to do this and do this and do that. And that's why I'm saying, look, it will be very difficult. There are many advantages now to the incumbents, not because they performed. In fact, it is because the disadvantage that should have come with their underperformance as an incumbent government is not being taken advantage of by the opposition by providing us simple alternatives. And then go to some of the complex ones. For instance, I've always argued that government must have a role in the means of production. Because the most sustainable way for government to earn revenue, especially foreign exchange, is through its investment in export competitive enterprises, state-owned enterprises. I compare two countries, China and United States of America. America is heavily indebted to itself, though.
Well,
simple, it can print the dollar. It owns the dollar. So America today has an emergency, COVID emergency. It can afford to give every citizen $2,000 in aid, in help. All it needs to do is to talk to the Treasury. Treasury will sit down to the Feds and they'll bring out the money and call it debt. They will say, okay, the Treasury has issued Treasury bills or bonds and the Feds have bought it up. So in buying it all, they just print Naira, they'll print dollars and circulate the entire environment and pay for government expenditure. Because they own the dollar, and the dollar is the international
benchmark for exchange.
Globally for now. But for other non-American countries like us, we need to earn that dollar. We can print it. So for instance, China knows it has to earn dollar as a government to be able to provide for their people, their welfare and security. So what has China decided to do? Float government-owned enterprises that compete globally for the same dollars. So for instance, some of the largest electronic franchises from China with products all over Africa and the world are owned by the Chinese government. Their construction companies in Nigeria, for instance, are largely owned by the Chinese government. Bottling companies, hotels, confectionaries. In fact, if you see a Chinese man frying akara at Zone 1 Junction, it is likely that that akara investment is from the Chinese government. So what this means is that the Chinese government, as a government, is making direct revenue from overseas investment globally. And that is why the Chinese government is having over $3 trillion in its foreign reserve, while America has less than $1 trillion.
In fact, with some debts to go with.
Something to go with it. But whereas they own it, they can only print and take care of themselves and tell you they owe themselves and nobody can draw them or nobody can go to them and ask for repayment of debt. But for a developing country like Nigeria, we must do this. I've always made the argument that in the past we tried it, it failed. Not because the principle of government doing business was wrong, it was the operators. So what is the lesson we need to learn from this? That we need to change the status quo of government, make it meritocratic, make it as above board as Caesar's wife, rid it of corruption so that they can bake this national cake enough for us. Something happened to Nigeria recently. People are not paying attention. This is the first time the federal government cannot meet up its responsibilities in a long while. You know why? Our neoliberal practices since 1999 has come to its wit's end. So government major revenue comes from crude oil export, from government.
Yes.
And then taxes from you and I. And now government responsibility has increased. When it removed subsidy and floated the Naira, it increased cost of running government itself, cost of construction of road, cost of everything. And government revenue is still largely static with less than 2 million barrels per day money, oil money. And government is the largest employer of labor, federal government.
Yes.
The entire security network is owned by the federal government. Everything you can think of, these premises, the maintenance of the road around it is by the federal government as the FCT. The government has now realized that the revenue it needs to meet all its responsibilities cannot be realized from taxation alone and crude oil sales. So they just admitted now that they have a revenue shortfall. That's why they cannot implement budgets beyond 30% of capital components.
It is sad because many even 2025 budget, I barely think we've even started to spend into
We're talking about 2024. It is so serious that it's affected even the ruling class. The National Assembly members, for instance, are now resorting to locking their offices. You see, when I used to be very familiar with the National Assembly, members from the South usually don't have pressures. Abuja is a bit far from the South, so people cannot travel from Bayelsa or from Delta to Abuja and from offices. So the MPs of the South have this luxury of locking the offices and going for plenary. Very few staffs, nobody comes around them. So we from the North used to wonder, this will I enjoy, you know? Wow. Now, but if you go to an average Northerners office, it's always open because people,
in, out.
If those of us who are from Kogi State, it just takes a stone throw. But if you leave your house from Kogi by 7 a.m., by 10, you are in the office of the overall member. So we had that burden of too many people coming around. Guess what? Northern MPs in the National Assembly have now put e-locks on their doors, security locks, electronic locks, because they can no longer cater for the number of people coming to see them in the office. So if you're not invited, you'll be at the door. You see people thronging the doors of their MPs, trying to forcefully open the door. It will not open because the guy inside is trying to know the priority person there that he's going to ask for. And when the pressures become too much, they travel and leave the premises. Why? Even their own constituency project funds have not been released. So the money you're making, what they pay them quarterly allowance for constituency, the constituency has grown, the money has remained static. And what 1,000 could do 2 years ago will require probably 10 or 15,000. So meaning he can spend less and less for the people. So the best thing is to just evaporate from the system, from the premises.
Let me push you on one more subject before we round off. The issue of insecurity as we have it in the country. There's no horn to pick it from. It's so monstrous that one could not even describe it as an animal anymore. Kogi State Governor said he was visiting President Tinubu and was hoping to get commendation, but the president sent him back and said, go and protect all of your people. And he says in doing that, he found a cache of arms, right, in an enclave in Kogi Forest. And this is the eve of election. And there's still quite a number of, kidnapping of school children, all kinds and variables of kidnapping going on across the country. Many of us are locked down with double seat belts in Abuja, not willing, not even asking to travel, whether on witchcraft wings or anything. Nobody wants to travel, especially because of the cost of the airlines. Insecurity is now a major thing, and it almost looks like it's a December reoccurring incident, if I would say, November, December reoccurring incident.
Nigeria is teetering on the brinks of state failure. And I think they shouldn't wake up as a country to tell ourselves this is reality. The better for us. What you see happening in Kogi and Kwara is that bandits in the Northwest that are being offered amnesty, that are being negotiated with, that are being paid ransom. So you see a lot of school children that are abducted and the ransom is paid. They tell you they deployed non-kinetic approach. So the security of children. What this has done is that these guys are now expanding their criminal franchise across the entire country. Because they have been pampered in the Northwest, they have been indulged, they have been emboldened by governments in action, both the states and federal governments.
But I don't know if you saw the video of where one of those terrorists arrested laid claim that much of the work that they have done was done alongside with the state government, even though that's his own side of it.
These guys lie a lot. So let's focus on the matter. We know what ails Nigeria. For instance, I can tell you for free, we know we have a problem of Islamist, not Islamist jihadi terrorism in Nigeria. I don't know where it is. We have a problem of urban crime. I mean, it's always been there, here and there. We have a problem of banditry. So when it comes to kidnapping, highway armed robbery and all that, banditry is what we're discussing. And we know where the origin of banditry is in Nigeria. And the people that are involved in banditry. Every crime has a sociology. It has an identity. For instance, jihadi terrorism in Nigeria, anybody wants to tell you, it's done by people who believe they are even better Muslims than myself. They believe that what they are doing is actually the practice of their religion. We may differ in terms of ideology with them, but that does not make them less Muslim than myself. Because they think they are more Islamic than me. So it's a Muslim problem. And I've always argued that that problem cannot be solved in the long run by Muslims. So it's a religiously motivated insurgency that we have in Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other related groups like Rawa and Koranko. Now, we have the problem of banditry emanating from the Northwest, starting from Zamfara, Katsina, and spreading down. And we know how bandits operate. Bandit is a cultural problem. It's a cultural problem emanating from the Fulani demography. But what anybody tries to tell you, they try to deflect from this reality by telling you, don't profile them. It's not about profiling. It's about a reality. And how did banditry become such a big deal? You see, Nigeria is a complex nation, ethnic, religious, and all that. In each of these sections you see in Nigeria, across the country, there are primordial cultural practices that are not in conformity with modernity and constitutionality and law and order. So if the state is not forceful enough and assert itself and recedes, some of these tendencies can actually easily crop up. Banditry became a big deal because under the 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, the state receded under his control and allowed for the flourishing of banditry on one hand and the activities of killer headsmen on the other hand. Because the Buhari administration lumped the problem of former herders clashes on one hand with terrorist killer headsmen on the other hand and bandits and lumped it together as former herders clashes. And so in doing that and trying to apply all sorts of solutions, Ruga, this, grazing reserve, grazing route, and all of that, these guys that are simply making money from their franchise grew emboldened and became bigger. And they're now spreading across from the north to the south. So Kogi and Kwara being the gateway between the north and the south is where these guys have reached so far. They tend to overrun Kogi. Now, the government of Kogi, between the previous one and the current one, the governor, former governor Yabelo, and Ododo, there's a policy that they have. We don't negotiate with bandits, we don't talk to bandits. We eliminate them. But the question is, in the whole of northern Nigeria, apart from Kogi and maybe Zamfara governor, who has also said, look, we need all the force in this world to defeat these guys.
We're in kinetic mode.
Thank you very much. Most other governors in the north support the so-called non-kinetic approach, which has created a problem for Kogi and Kwara. Because as you apply your so-called non-kinetic approach, you guys are embodying, making more money, and now expanding their terror franchise. So Kogi is simply a victim of a failure of national security. A governor can only do so much. He doesn't have armed policemen. The vigilante are not allowed to carry the kind of weapons that the bandits are carrying.
Except in Enugu State, where the governor thinks otherwise.
No, even the arms they're carrying is not AK-47, no. It's simply an advanced form of pump action. It is cartridge that those guns are carrying. And so, these states are just doing all that they can do. They can't do beyond this. We need the commander-in-chief to secure every part of the country as long as the police, the armed forces, the immigration, the customs, the NDLEA, and all other security agencies are still under his control. It is his duty to secure Kogi, Kwara, Benue, Lagos, Zamfara, Sokoto, Kano, Plateau, it is his responsibility.
Talking about Plateau State, and this is my final question to you. People in Plateau State this year are a little bit anxious because come December 25, it almost seems like a reliable pattern that there's an attack. And I know a lot of people who are willing and interested in going home, but they fear such an attack may occur.
You won't blame such people. And of course, it was the killings in Benue and parts of Plateau that has gotten Nigeria designated right now as a country of particular concern by the United States government. And all of the brouhaha that it threw up about Christian genocide. And I hope and pray that the tantrums from Donald Trump, the disrespect, the bullying, will serve as a shock therapy to our president and commander-in-chief to now decisively deal with anybody, any group, armed, that are killing Nigerians across the board. I hope and pray that will serve as a shock therapy because we wasted too much time arguing over the truism or otherwise of a Christian genocide in Nigeria. When we should have been engaging with our international partners and friends like the United States of America on how to bring a solution to a problem that, yes, a group is complaining about, but affects all of us. And I had warned in prior sessions with my friends in government to say, this argument over whether there's Christian genocide in Nigeria is unnecessary. You can't decide for a man or a group of people how to describe their tragedy. As long as we all agree that there are targeted killings of Christians in Nigeria. And I give you two examples. ISWAP, one of the dominant, virulent Islamist jihadi group in Nigeria, has made no pretense about its targeted killings of Christians. In fact, in 2015, shortly before they broke into two factions, when ISIS extended hand of fellowship to Boko Haram, and they became an affiliate of Boko Haram, of ISIS, which made them now transform into Islamic State of West Africa province. The guideline was simple: stop targeting Muslims, except those that are aid workers, that are soldiers, that are members of the vigilante, or those that are simply involved in fighting you. But you go into communities or anywhere and you see Muslims, don't just attack them like that. It was a guideline that was given to Israel. The other side of the Boko Haram, led by Shekau, refused to abide by that. But the majority of the members felt this is more reasonable. And so they shifted. And to show you that they were serious, they went to a school in Dapchi, picked some girls, brought back all the remaining Muslims and headed on to the Christian girl, just to underscore the new stand of Israel. And we now saw videos given by Israel showing how they were slaughtering captured Christian leaders. We saw it. That was the first time that Nigeria was designated as a CPC in 2020. That was the first time. So Israel has not made any pretense about the fact that if they see you and you're not of their faith, you are in trouble. I mean, it's not a hidden secret. Now, coming to the Plateau, I also identified activities of killer headsmen on the Plateau and the Benue. You see, Fulanis, as an ethnic group, are predominantly Muslims. So presumably, when you have the Fulanis attacking a community, you like to see a Sanusi there, an Abubakar there, a Muhammad there, people that appear to Muslims. Their intention may not have been to kill people because they are Christians, maybe not. But the fact is, most of the victims are Christians. But the victims are not in their cocoon to know their intention. Therefore, they're going to express their worries, their concerns, as they see it. I have to talk about intent. Do you belong to the Shura Council of Israel or to the inner council of the killer headsmen to know the intention behind their killings of people who happen to be predominantly Christians in these areas? So what is important is the semantics of whether the genocide or not is irrelevant. People are being killed, they're targeted killings. And also made the point that, yes, Muslims are being killed. I said, the problem here is this. We are discussing genocide has to do with identity, not just conflict. So for instance, if a normal Boko Haram group kills Muslims, it can never count as a genocide because it's a Muslim group as a Muslim people. That's why banditry in the Northwest, the Fulani homeland in Nigeria, has now been counted as genocide. Nobody talked about genocide before because most of their victims are from their own demographic. But when you cross over to Plateau and you kill somebody from another ethnic group and another religious group, legitimate concerns about genocide can be raised. Because genocide starts with the killing of one person, one. The first person that was killed in Rwanda was just one person.
Yeah.
But it was allowed to go on unchecked. The world was arguing at the same time whether it was genocide or not. And within 3 months, over 1 million people were slaughtered. So in Nigeria, it's the same thing. It starts with one person. And if you don't stop the killing now, it will get to a level where it will satisfy the definition of genocide by all those that are opposing and even agreeing with the claim of genocide in Nigeria. So what is important is stop the killing and stop the semantics. But first, we need national unity. And to achieve that, those of us that are Muslims should stop talking down on those that are Christians, that are claiming, that are crying out for genocide. No. Because we must understand that the people that are responsible for both the killing of members of our own family and our Christian brethren come from our family. So we must take that responsibility and show empathy. So that together, we cannot come together and find a lasting solution. You saw in Australia, that Muslim man demonstrated that I oppose the killing of Jews by these my Muslim brothers.
Yes.
So he took it upon himself to fight back on behalf of the Jewish people. So if we don't have the stamina to go and confront killers, let us at least show empathy to those who are being killed by members of our demography. We cannot live in the none of this. It is important for national healing. So together we can approach the United States and say, okay, in as much as there is targeted killing of Christians in Nigeria by certain groups, it does not enjoy state sanction or support from the mainstream Muslim community. We're not at war in Nigeria. Therefore, we have come together as brethren, as citizens, to ask for help to take out this common killer that kills us and kills them.
Mr. Majeed Dahiru, I have to say a big thank you to you for coming on Volume with FemiDlive today.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And yes, it's always a delight to learn from you as
Thank
always.
you very much.
And that's the show for today. Thank you so much for being part of our year. The year starts off soon enough in 2026. We started strong with Majeed Dahiru, and now we're finishing strong with Majeed Dahiru as well. Keep your comments coming in and your points of agreement or disagreement as you may have them. Remember to share your videos, and well, at some point, some people are remixing videos as well. It's a delight to have you tag us in the remixed version of the video. The social media platforms, of course, are available, so feel free to tag us in those videos, and we would also consider on the clear understanding what you have done, whether to repost them. But it's a delight to have you do that. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I am Femi D. Amele.